And so did Stanley Lambchop. In fact, Ms. Root had promised her class a surprise this afternoon. By the end of the day, she had told her class. But the day was half over now, and they still did not know what the surprise was. How much longer would they have to wait? Stanley wondered. After lunch, Stanley's class had library time. They would not return to Ms. Root's room until everyone in the class had picked a book to read. Usually Stanley loved the library. Today, though, he was wishing it was already over, and it had not started yet. As he put his lunchbox away, Stanley complained to Marco. "I'm tired of waiting to find out what the surprise is," he said. "I know," Marco grumbled. "I hope it is a good surprise, not a bad surprise." Stanley had not thought of that. "I hope the surprise is not extra homework," he said. Marco grinned. "I hope this surprise is not like one of my lunches," he added. Ms. Root's class walked in a line to the library. The kids knew what to do when they got there. They picked up their library cards and settled in on the reading rug. The library teacher, Ms. Perkinson, would read them stories before they were allowed to pick out some books. "I wonder if Ms. Perkinson knows what the surprise is," Stanley whispered to Marco when the other kids were settling down. "If she does," Marco whispered back, "maybe she will give us some clues." Stanley liked the sound of that. He paid extra attention while Ms. Perkinson was reading. The first story she read was about a girl and her dog. Maybe a dog was coming to visit Ms. Root's class today, Stanley thought. But the next story was about big machines building a highway. Was Miss Root's class about to pave a road? Probably not, Stanley thought. When it was time for the kids to choose their books, Stanley was still thinking about the surprise. There did not seem to be clues in Ms. Perkinson's stories. Maybe there were clues in other parts of the library. While the rest of his class was browsing, Stanley took a look around. He went to a bookshelf in a distant corner of the library, then flattened himself against the books. When no one was watching, he peered around the shelf. Were there clues on Ms. Perkinson's desk? No. Ms. Perkinson had a big mug of coffee on her desk. She had a laptop and a plant in a pot, but there was nothing that seemed surprising. Stanley sighed. When Ms. Perkinson came around the corner, he unpeeled himself from the shelf. "Can I help you find a book?" she asked him. No," Stanley stammered. "I just need another minute." Stanley quickly picked a mystery story and checked it out with the rest of the class. Then it was time to go back to Ms. Root's room. As he got into the line, Stanley could feel his heart beating fast. Any minute now, the class would find out what the surprise was. Stanley looked at Marco and gave him a thumbs up. When the class was lined up in the library, Ms. Root walked them down the hallway to their classroom. "Let's remember our manners, friends," she said as they started walking. "Let's remember to keep our voices down." Ms. Root always called her students friends. Stanley did not make a peep. Once he and his classmates settled into their seats, Ms. Root finally broke the news. "Now, I know we are all waiting for a big announcement," she said. "Who is ready to find out what our class surprise is?" Every single student raised a hand. Stanley raised both hands at the same time and waved them. "Friends, today I'd like to introduce you to a new friend," Ms. Root continued. "A new student?" Stanley wondered, looking at Marco. Marco shrugged. Then Ms. Root walked over to a closet in the corner of the classroom. She added, "This new friend will help us in our study of science." Stanley was wondering why she would put a new student in a closet and what that had to do with science when Ms. Root opened the closet door. Then he saw what the surprise was. Inside the closet there was a big glass tank, and inside the tank there was a hamster.